Genesis 23, an exegetical and biblical-theological commentary. Introduction. God's unilateral covenant with Abraham, first articulated in Genesis 12 and expanded in Genesis 15, guarantees both a seed and a territorial inheritance. Following the severe testing of the seed promise in the Akedah in Genesis 22, the narrative of Genesis 23 pivots to test the reality of the land promise. Within the progressive unfolding of the divine promise plan, this chapter grounds the overarching biblical worldview of covenantal inheritance in a tangible historical necessity, the death and burial of Sarah. The passage demonstrates how the patriarchs faithfully related to the promised land during their earthly sojourn. They functioned as resident aliens who nevertheless laid a legal, concrete claim to the territory that would eventually belong to the physical nation of Israel. Exegesis of Genesis 23, the death of Sarah and the posture of the patriarch. The pericope opens with the passing of Sarah. This prompts Abraham to negotiate for a permanent burial site among the Hittites. Abraham approaches the local inhabitants not as a conquering suzerain, but with profound humility. He recognizes his status as dust and ashes. Despite knowing by faith that the land was divinely promised to him and his descendants, Abraham did not presumptively build a castle or a throne room to assert immediate rulership. His posture reflects a profound trust in the ultimate future fulfillment of the unilateral covenant, without grasping for its premature, humanly engineered realization. The purchase of Machpelah. The narrative meticulously details the legal negotiations between Abraham and Ephron the Hittite. Abraham insists on paying the full price for the cave of Machpelah rather than accepting it as a gift. In doing so, he establishes an undisputed legal foothold in Canaan. This transaction marks the first physical piece of the promised land legally owned by the patriarch. The careful recording of the transaction underscores the concrete, historical nature of the promise plan. The promises to ethnic Israel are deeply rooted in physical geography and historical space. They refuse to be relegated entirely to the spiritual realm. New Testament appropriations. The apostolic writers consistently recognize that the patriarchs' relationship to the promised land organically typified the eschatological reality of the one people of God who await the fullness of the promised plan. In Romans chapter 4, verse 13, the Apostle Paul expands the canonical scope of the land promise. He notes that the promise to Abraham and his offspring was ultimately that he would be heir of the world. In Hebrews chapter 11, verses 9 through 10, the author notes that Abraham lived as an alien in the land of promise. This demonstrates that the ultimate fulfillment of God's covenant extends beyond immediate physical possession to a heavenly reality, without negating the concrete promises made to his physical descendants. In Galatians chapter 3, verse 16, Paul explicitly draws upon the Abrahamic promises from the Septuagint rendering of Genesis 12, verse 7 and chapter 13, verse 15. He identifies the ultimate singular seed as Yeshua the Messiah, through whom the ultimate inheritance is secured. Theological synthesis. Genesis 23 stands as a pivotal monument within the organic, progressive development of the promise plan theology. The chapter beautifully holds in tension the present reality of Abraham's sojourning with the future certainty of the divine decree. By legally acquiring a burial plot, Abraham secures a physical down payment on the covenantal promise. This ensures that the roots of ethnic Israel remain permanently anchored in the land of Canaan. This concrete historical action organically points forward to the ultimate fulfillment of God's redemptive purposes. The physical land, while maintaining its valid future-oriented significance for Israel, simultaneously expands in the canonical horizon to encompass the renewed creation, where the promises find their cosmic consummation in the person and work of the Messiah.